He brought home an unattractive wife, but it was something his neighbor never expected. After returning from her son's wedding, Henrietta was extremely happy seeing the newlyweds over the moon. Henrietta came from a small village where it didn't take too long for news to spread. And right enough, the very next day, Henrietta's neighbor Elise came running to her with questions. She wanted to know everything about the wedding and the people that came to it. Elise continued questioning Henrietta about the wedding and even asked how many people had attended. Henrietta responded that there was no big reception and the couple had only signed officially. Naturally, Elise had to boast that her son had a lavish wedding in one of the best restaurants in town. But Henrietta immediately shot her down, saying that Elise hadn't even been to her son's wedding and he was already divorced. This struck a nerve with Elise, who immediately went silent. Elise's son had fled to the city from the army and had been engaged in resale somewhere in the markets. Henrietta's son had served as an urgent sailor and even stayed for 5 years under a contract. But Henrietta chose not to brag about it and still remained extremely proud of her son without bringing anybody else down. But Elise still wanted to know more about Henrietta's new daughter-in-law and what she did, and whether she was beautiful. Henrietta responded, saying that she was a simple girl who worked as a nurse on the same ship as her son, and that's how they met. Elise remarked that Henrietta's son only managed to find someone on the ship as they were in an enclosed place. Henrietta was visibly annoyed and told Elise to stop discussing her life. Henrietta didn't see the problem with the couple meeting at work and knew her son wouldn't just marry out of boredom. Mark, Henrietta's son, had finished his contract, and he and his wife had ultimately decided to return to the village. They only desired to have a happy and quiet family life. Henrietta was thrilled that her son and new daughter-in-law were coming home. Elise was rather envious and even asked Henrietta if she could visit, but Henrietta told her that she had to wait. Henrietta told Elise that the children needed a break from their travels throughout the day. The last thing they needed was Elise asking them unwanted questions. Even though Henrietta had told her not to, Elise went to their house that evening. Elise lied that she had wanted to make pancakes, but the flour was over, so she came over. Upon seeing Elise, Mark invited her to come in and taste some of his mom's pie. Mark then mentioned that his wife was there too, which made Elise immediately jump out of her seat to take a peek. As soon as Elise saw the girl, Miranda, she dropped all that was in her hands. Elise considered Miranda to be deprived of beauty and quite short, while Mark was a handsome man with decent height. She even had a large scar on her face. Elise remained silent and took a quick glance at her friend as though nothing had happened. Henrietta was just glad that her children were home. The couple had been looking for jobs when they got back in town. Mark managed to land a job as a mechanic on a farm, and his wife Miranda got a job as a paramedic. While young people usually look for work in a big city with high-paying jobs, the couple had decided to stay in Mark's hometown. One day, a fire had broken out in a sauna in the village close to the hospital. Seeing this, Miranda dropped everything she was doing and ran to help. People had already gathered around to see what was happening. There were screams that a small girl had been left inside. As soon as she heard this, Miranda pushed the crowd aside and jumped into the fire. The people were stunned and had even warned her that it was risky. Soon enough, Miranda jumped out of the fire holding a little girl in her arms. Right behind her, the house began to crumble and soon crashed. The fire was eventually extinguished. Had Miranda not jumped in, the little girl may not have survived. Later that day, Miranda was invited to the house of the little girl she had saved. Her parents thanked Miranda for what she did and asked her how she wasn't afraid to jump in. Miranda stated that as a little girl, she, too, had been pulled out of a fire by this Russian soldier during one of the worst times of her life. One of the girls even asked if the scars were a result of this fire, to which Miranda nodded in agreement. However, the soldier that saved Miranda had passed away during the battle, and Miranda and her family decided to bury him quietly. Miranda then showed the family that the only thing she had from her Russian savior was a talisman. The grandfather then recognized the talisman and stated that it was his son's. He had absolutely no idea what had really happened to his son or where he was buried, and requested Miranda to take him to his son's grave. It's truly funny how small the world can be and how one good deed can help a person in ways no one could imagine. And always remember to never judge someone by their appearance unless you know the whole story.